Yes, it had been so long ago I'd forgotten. The old ones here, the ones who made us. Yes, it is still in my memory banks.
When the Addams Family premiered in 1964, one voice became instantly iconic. That deep, resonant greeting, "You rang," turned Lurch into television history. But Ted Cassidy, the man behind that unforgettable character, lived a life that most viewers never knew about. Behind the towering butler was a brilliant student, a devoted father, a talented musician, and a man battling a medical condition that shaped everything about him. This is the hidden life of Ted Cassidy from the Addams Family. The boy who was always different. Theodore Crawford. Cassidy entered the world on July 31, 1932, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. His parents, Elwood Lewis Cassidy and Emily Crawford, were of Irish ancestry and lived modestly. When Ted was young, the family moved to Philippi, West Virginia, a small town where everyone knew everyone else's business. From the beginning, Ted stood out in two ways. First, he was intellectually gifted. At age 6, he entered 3rd grade, skipping ahead of children 2 years older. His mind absorbed information at a rate that amazed his teachers. He read voraciously, excelled in every subject, and showed a particular talent for public speaking and drama. Second, he was growing at an alarming rate. By age 11, when he started high school as a freshman, Ted was already over 6 feet tall. While other kids his age were still children, Ted towered over them. He joined the football and basketball teams, using his height to his advantage, even though he was years younger than his teammates. His classmates at Philippi High School remembered him as friendly and popular despite his unusual appearance. Ted had learned early how to use humor to deflect attention from his size. He made people laugh before they could make jokes about him. It was a defensive mechanism that would serve him throughout his life. By the time Ted graduated from high school, he was already approaching his adult height of 6 feet 9 inches. He enrolled at West Virginia Wesleyan College in Buckhannon, joining the Alpha Sigma Phi fraternity. There, he continued playing basketball and became actively involved in student government. His teammates and fraternity brothers accepted him, but Ted knew his height would always define how others saw him. After 2 years, Ted transferred to Stetson University in DeLand, Florida. From 1952 to 1955, he played basketball for the Stetson Hatters. During the summer of 1952, he worked as a lifeguard in the Ormond Beach area, his towering frame making him easily visible to swimmers in distress. In 1956, Ted graduated with a degree in speech and drama. He'd found his calling, not in sports or academics, but in performance, in using his voice and presence to create characters. Marriage and early career. Just 2 weeks after graduating from Stetson University, Ted married Margaret Helen Jesse on June 14, 1956. Margaret's brother, Dan Jesse, was also in the entertainment industry, which may have helped her understand the unusual life Ted was pursuing. The young couple settled first in Jacksonville, Florida, where Ted took a job at a local radio station. Radio suited Ted perfectly. His voice was his greatest asset, impossibly deep, clear, commanding. Listeners couldn't see his unusual appearance. They only heard that magnificent instrument. Ted could read the news, interview guests, and deliver commercials with authority that belied his young age. In 1957, Margaret gave birth to their son, Sean. The following year, Ted moved the family to Pensacola, where he worked at WCOA Radio from 1958 through 1959. Then came an opportunity that would change everything. WFAA radio and television in Dallas, Texas was hiring, and Ted got the job. Dallas in the early 1960s was growing rapidly, and WFAA was one of the city's major media outlets. Ted worked as a midday disc jockey, spinning records and chatting with listeners. He also occasionally appeared on WFAA TV Channel 8, playing a character called Creech, an outer space creature who appeared during afternoon movie segments. It was silly, low-budget television, but it gave Ted experience in front of the camera. In 1960, Margaret gave birth to their daughter, Cameron. Ted was now a father of 2, working steady jobs in radio and television, building a comfortable life for his family. He moonlighted as a musician, playing the organ at Luby's Cafeteria in the Lockwood Shopping Center. Customers would eat their meals while Ted provided entertainment, his long fingers moving across the keys with surprising grace for someone of his size. Then came November 22nd, 1963. Ted was at the WFAA radio station when word came that President John F. Kennedy had been shot in Dealey Plaza just minutes away. Ted went on air, providing live coverage as information trickled in. He was among the first reporters to interview eyewitnesses W.E. Newman Jr. and Gail Newman, who'd been standing near the presidential motorcade when the shots rang out. It was the biggest news story Ted would ever cover, and his calm, authoritative voice helped a shocked nation process what had happened. But Ted's ambitions extended beyond Dallas. He wanted to act, to use not just his voice, but his whole presence. In 1964, he made a decision that seemed crazy to his family and friends. He was moving to Los Angeles to pursue a career in Hollywood. Margaret and the children would come with him. It was a huge risk for a man with a wife, 2 young children, and no guarantee of work. But Ted believed his unusual appearance could be an asset in Hollywood, which was always looking for distinctive character actors. Becoming Lurch. When Ted arrived in Hollywood in 1964, he started making the rounds of casting offices. His agent tried to find roles that would use his height and voice effectively. Science fiction shows were popular, and Ted landed guest spots on Lost in Space and other genre programs. But he needed something steady, something that would pay the bills. Then came an audition for a new sitcom. Producer David Levy was developing The Addams Family, based on Charles Addams's macabre cartoons from The New Yorker. The cast included John Astin as Gomez, Carolyn Jones as Morticia, and Jackie Coogan as Uncle Fester. They needed someone to play Lurch, the family butler. In Charles Addams's original cartoons, Lurch never spoke. He was simply a tall, ghoulish presence who served the family silently. Ted auditioned, and the producers liked what they saw. His height was perfect. His face had the right hangdog quality. But something unexpected happened during that first meeting. When someone rang a bell, Ted responded with 2 words in his deep voice. "You rang?" The producers burst out laughing. It was perfect. In that instant, Ted had transformed Lurch from a silent background character into a speaking role with one of television's most memorable catchphrases. The line stayed in the show, and Ted Cassidy had just created television history. The Addams Family premiered on September 18, 1964, the same night as The Munsters, its rival Monster Family sitcom. But The Addams Family had something special. The writing was sharp, the performances were committed, and Lurch became an instant fan favorite. Every time someone summoned him and he responded with, "You rang," audiences loved it. Ted didn't just play Lurch, he also played Thing, the disembodied hand that would emerge from boxes to help the family. Whenever Lurch and Thing appeared together on screen, the show's associate producer would step in to play Thing, but most of the time, that hand viewers saw was Ted's. He was credited as itself for the Thing role, maintaining the mystery. The show ran for only 2 seasons, ending in 1966 after 64 episodes. Despite its short run, The Addams Family became a cultural phenomenon, living on in syndication and becoming more popular in reruns than it had been during its original broadcast. Ted had created a character that would outlive him, that would be remembered long after he was gone. Life beyond the butler. After The Addams Family ended, Ted found himself in the same position as many actors known for a single iconic role. Casting directors saw him and thought, Lurch. They couldn't see past his height, his voice, his distinctive appearance. Ted fought against the typecasting, but it was an uphill battle. He made a memorable appearance on Batman in 1966, showing up in character as Lurch during one of the show's famous wall climbing sequences. He was sitting at a harpsichord when Batman and Robin climbed past his window. It was a fun crossover moment that gave fans a chance to see Lurch in color, since The Addams Family had been filmed in black and white. Gene Roddenberry cast Ted in Star Trek's first season episode What Are Little Girls Made Of, where he played Ruck, an android. He also provided voices for other Star Trek episodes, the Gorn Captain in Arena, and Balok's puppet in the Corbomite Maneuver. His voice was perfect for aliens and androids, but it meant he was rarely playing human characters. In 1969, Ted landed a role in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, one of the biggest films of the year. He played Harvey Logan, a member of Butch Cassidy's gang who challenges Butch for leadership. It wasn't a large role, but it was in a prestigious film alongside Paul Newman and Robert Redford. Ted hoped it would lead to more serious dramatic work, but those opportunities rarely materialized. Throughout his marriage to Margaret, Ted's career kept the family moving. They'd left Dallas for Los Angeles, relocating to Woodland Hills, California, where Ted could be close to the studios. Margaret pursued her own education, studying psychology at UCLA while raising their 2 children. But the strains of show business were taking their toll on the marriage. In 1975, Ted and Margaret divorced after 19 years of marriage. Sean was 18, Cameron was 15. Both children were old enough to understand what was happening, but that didn't make it easier. Ted moved into his own place, though he remained close to his children and continued supporting them financially. After the divorce, Ted began a relationship with Sandra Ego, an actress who'd appeared in several films and television shows in the 1960s and 1970s. They became engaged and planned to marry in May 1979. Sandra understood the entertainment industry, having worked in it herself, and Ted seemed happy with the prospect of starting fresh. The voice work that defined a generation. While Ted struggled to find substantial acting roles, he found consistent work as a voice actor. Hanna-Barbera Studios employed him extensively throughout the late 1960s and 1970s. He voiced Frankenstein Jr. in Frankenstein Jr. and The Impossibles. He was Meteor Man in Birdman and the Galaxy Trio. He provided voices for Space Ghost, The Fantastic Four, and Super Friends. Ted's son Sean has joked that if you watched Saturday morning cartoons in the 1970s, you heard his father's voice multiple times without knowing it. Children across America were growing up with Ted Cassidy's deep tones narrating their favorite shows, creating the voices of their heroes and villains, but rarely knowing the name of the man behind the characters. In 1977, Ted landed what would become his most enduring voice role. He became the narrator for the Incredible Hulk television series starring Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno. His opening narration set the tone for the show, explaining Dr. David Banner's tragic condition in somber, dramatic tones. Ted also provided the Hulk's growls and roars for the first 2 seasons, using his vocal range to create the sounds of rage and pain that defined the character. The Incredible Hulk became a massive hit, and Ted's narration was an integral part of its success. Every episode opened with his voice, and viewers came to associate that deep, measured delivery with the show itself. It was steady work that paid well and gave Ted visibility, even though audiences didn't see his face. But Ted wanted more. He'd co-written the screenplay for The Herod Experiment in 1973, proving he had talents beyond performing. He made guest appearances on dozens of television shows: The Beverly Hillbillies, Daniel Boone, Bonanza, The Man from UNCLE. He appeared in films like McKenna's Gold, The Limit, Poor Pretty Eddie, Harry and Walter Go to New York, and Goin' Coconuts. He was working constantly, but most of the roles were small, forgettable, the kind of parts that paid the bills but didn't challenge him as an artist. The medical reality. Ted's height and distinctive appearance weren't random genetic gifts. Throughout his life, he dealt with the effects of acromegaly, a disorder caused when the pituitary gland produces too much growth hormone. This condition is rare, affecting only about 50 to 70 people per million. Ted's son Sean has been very clear about this. His father did not have gigantism, despite what urban legends claim. Acromegaly typically appears in adults and causes bones to continue growing in diameter even after someone has reached their full height. This leads to distinctive physical features: larger hands and feet, pronounced facial features including a prominent jaw and brow, and Ted's trademark deep voice, which resulted from the growth of his vocal cords and larynx. But acromegaly carries serious health complications beyond appearance: high blood pressure, high cholesterol, an enlarged heart, arthritis, sleep apnea. The condition puts tremendous strain on the cardiovascular system over time. John Astin, Ted's close friend and co-star on The Addams Family, noted in interviews that Ted dealt with arthritis, which likely contributed to Lurch's distinctive slow, lumbering walk. What viewers saw as a character choice was partly Ted adapting to his own physical discomfort. He rarely complained, but friends knew he was in pain more often than he let on. By the late 1970s, Ted's health was deteriorating. In late 1978, doctors discovered a benign tumor on his heart. It wasn't cancer, but it was dangerous. The tumor was likely connected to his acromegaly. The same condition that had shaped his career had created a growth that could kill him. Ted underwent open-heart surgery at St. Vincent Medical Center in Los Angeles. The operation was successful. Surgeons removed the tumor, and Ted was sent home to recuperate at his house in Woodland Hills, where he lived with his fiancée, Sandra Ego. The worst seemed to be over. The final days. In the weeks after his surgery, Ted's friends noticed he was behaving strangely. He told several people that he had a feeling his time was limited, that something bad was going to happen. Whether it was intuition or simply awareness of his medical fragility, Ted seemed to know something wasn't right. Several days after returning home, complications arose. Ted's condition worsened rapidly. Sandra called an ambulance, and Ted was readmitted to St. Vincent Medical Center. John Aston rushed to the hospital after Ted's children called him. Aston sat with his friend, talking to him, hoping a familiar voice might help, but Ted had slipped into a coma. On January 16, 1979, Ted Cassidy died at age 46. The complications from his heart surgery had proven fatal. His body was cremated, and according to his wishes, his ashes were buried in the backyard of his Woodland Hills home. His family also held a private funeral service at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills. The news of Ted's death shocked his friends and colleagues. At 46, he should have had decades ahead of him. His children, Sean and Cameron, were just 22 and 19 years old. They'd lost their father far too soon. Sandra Ego, who'd been preparing to marry Ted in just 4 months, was devastated. The Incredible Hulk continued using Ted's narration for the remainder of its run, which lasted until 1982. His Hulk growls were replaced with animal sounds for subsequent seasons, but that opening narration remained, a lasting reminder of the man behind the voice. Generations of viewers heard Ted Cassidy without ever knowing his name, without realizing the narrator had died years before the show ended. The children he left behind. Ted's children, Sean and Cameron, grew up surrounded by their father's legacy. Sean has spoken occasionally about his dad over the years, defending him against misconceptions and setting the record straight about his medical condition. He's made it clear that despite the urban legends, Ted did not have gigantism. He's also shared memories of his father as a warm, intelligent man who loved his family and took his work seriously. Both Sean and Cameron became attorneys, choosing careers far from the entertainment industry that had defined their father's life. They've largely stayed out of the spotlight, living private lives away from Hollywood. It's impossible to know how much Ted's absence shaped their choices, but they clearly decided not to follow in his footsteps. The burial of Ted's ashes in his backyard was an unusual choice, but it reflected Ted's desire to remain close to the life he'd built. That Woodland Hills home had been his refuge, the place where he could escape the demands of being Lurch or that tall guy and just be Ted. Having his ashes there meant he never had to leave. The legacy that endures. Ted Cassidy never won an Emmy. He never became a household name in the way that Carol O'Connor or Mary Tyler Moore did, but he created one of the most memorable characters in television history, and his voice work reached millions of children who grew up hearing him narrate their Saturday mornings and their weeknight dramas. In 1991, The Addams Family was adapted into a feature film. A very tall Dutch actor named Karel Struiken played Lurch, bringing his own interpretation to the role. He reprised it for the 1993 sequel Addams Family Values and the 1998 TV movie Addams Family Reunion. Struiken did an admirable job, but for fans of the original series, no one could replace Ted Cassidy. What makes Ted's story particularly poignant is the gap between his abilities and the opportunities Hollywood gave him. Here was a man with a college degree in speech and drama, an accomplished musician, a journalist who'd covered the Kennedy assassination, a writer who'd co-written a screenplay. He had so much more to offer than his unusual appearance suggested. But Hollywood in the 1960s and 1970s couldn't see past his height and his voice. Casting directors typecast him as monsters, aliens, villains, characters defined by their physical difference from normal humans. Ted took those roles because he had to support his family, but friends knew he wanted more. He wanted complex characters, dramatic roles, opportunities to show his range. The medical condition that gave Ted his career also took his life. Acromegaly brought him fame but also pain, health problems, and ultimately death at 46, an age when many actors are just hitting their stride. Andre the Giant, who also had acromegaly, died at 46 as well. Richard Kiel, who played Jaws in the James Bond films and also had acromegaly, lived longer but faced similar challenges. The physical toll is real, and the life expectancy for people with acromegaly is typically reduced. The hidden life of Ted Cassidy was filled with contradictions. He was a brilliant student who often played dim-witted characters. He was an accomplished musician who was best known for a role where he never played real music. He was a loving father and devoted partner whose personal life was often overshadowed by his most famous character. He wanted to be taken seriously as an actor but was forever defined by by a butler who said, "You rang?" Yet Ted's legacy endures. The Addams Family continues in syndication. New adaptations keep appearing. Animated series, films, and most recently, the Netflix series Wednesday. Each version introduces Lurch to another generation, and each generation compares the new version to Ted's original performance. That deep voice saying, "You rang," remains the gold standard, the one everyone remembers. Ted Cassidy lived only 46 years, but in that time he created something that has lasted over 60 years and shows no signs of fading. He brought dignity to a character that could have been just a sight gag. He made Lurch more than his height, more than his appearance. He made him human, with hints of sadness and loyalty and devotion beneath the mournful exterior. The hidden life of Ted Cassidy from the Addams Family was about more than fame or a catchphrase. It was about a man who dealt with a serious medical condition, who faced constant typecasting, who loved his children, who created art under difficult circumstances, and who died far too young. He deserved better than Hollywood gave him, but he made the most of what he had, and that perhaps is the real story worth remembering. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on more fascinating stories.